Hi, this is the second part of character animations. In this one, we're going to take a look at character rigging, specifically rigging out of photographs of Efeoja. Okay, let's get to it. So what I have in front of me is a Photoshop file, and when you look at it at face value, you might think that, okay, this is just a picture of Efeoja, but no, it is not. It is a collage, it is a rig made out of separate pieces, separate limbs, acquired from multiple photographs of Efeoja, like so. If you want to create limbs out of photographs, well, you need to photograph those limbs separately, because when you're looking at it like this, you can only see the right leg or the right arm and the right leg of Efeoja. There has to be a left leg and left arm for Efeoja as well. And when you're photographing someone from the side, you cannot see all of the limbs together. So you need to pose if you're going to do this technique, or even if you're not going to use photographs and you're going to use maybe other shapes, drawings, pictures gathered from magazines or whatever technique you want to use, you want to be able to separately isolate these limbs, left and right, so that when the time comes to animate, well, there is a material to animate. So that's why these photographs are meant to provide all of these limbs in isolated form, so I can cut it out and arrange them in this Photoshop file. And arrange how? Well, first of all, they are each in their own independent layers. They are all named as something that I can recognize, and we highly suggest you do the same, because if you do not do that, then you won't be able to figure out what part of the body is where. Okay, so what we have here is a bunch of elements. Let's start with the torso right in the middle. So torso is basically the main object. It is the object everything will be constrained to, everything will be, let's say, connected to. And we are using the torso as the entire body itself, not just lower body and upper body, but connected. You can choose to separate them. Like, you can choose to separate it as hips and rib cage, or even hips, waist and rib cage. You can do that as well. You can separate this into multiple elements. We decided to keep it as one object. Then we have the head, but this is, when you're looking at it like this, might seem, let's say, just a part of the picture that is being cut out, but it is not that. If I just isolate the head, you're going to see that by using clone stamp tool, I have extended this head downward, so this gives me room to animate the head. Maybe I can bob it in or out, or maybe I can rotate it from the neck joint, let's say. And while I'm doing that, let me demonstrate. Okay, while I'm doing that, it won't just start sticking out. You won't see the empty space between the head and the collar of Efeoja's shirt. Okay, so there is room to animate this until, well, it becomes entirely detached from the body, obviously. But you get the idea. So what next? Well, as separate pieces, I have the legs and the arms. Now, legs on the left side are below the torso and the head system, because they are, from looking at it from this view, they are behind Efeoja's body. So they are at the bottom of the list. I have the top piece, the bottom piece, and the foot piece. Okay, and also behind the torso and behind the head, over here somewhere, I have the arms. Let me shut off torso and head. This is the top arm, and this is the forearm. Once again, these are for the left side of the body. Then after torso and head, we have the front leg. Let's not say front, but right leg, but that is closer to the camera, right? So the upper leg, the lower leg, the shin bone, and the foot. And similarly, I have the lower arm and upper arm as well. Okay, and any empty space created through cutting out these objects have been cleaned up or clone stamped using the already existing data in the photographs. That's why you need multiple photographs to create this, because yes, I can cut out the arm like this, but if I have the arm extended to some degree, then I have the information that would be otherwise remain underneath the arm visual itself. So I can use that information to complete the torso, or in this case, use this data, okay? And I can cut out the arm using other photographs, okay? So that's the idea. This is actually not just one picture, but a collage of pictures of the same person. Now, this is saved as a Photoshop file. And just as a reminder, once again, each and every single one of these objects contain data as much as they need to, and no other data inside the layer itself in another place, so that when I, for example, turn on their transform controls, like so, they only contain what they are meant to contain. There is no smudge here, no pixel here. They're not mistakenly connected to another part of the limb. So the bounding box for this layer is exactly as big as it should be. That is pretty important. Another detail you should know about these cutouts is that they are, after all, they contain information, especially at the joint areas, more than it is necessary, more than it is visually necessary when you're looking at it from this direction. But remember, we're going to animate this stuff, and when you start breaking those joints, or let's say bending, moving those joints, the information should persist. What this means is, let me, for example, isolate just the lower leg for one of the parts. Okay, so let me turn off everything and isolate the bottom portion of the right leg. As you can see, this is the knee joint, but when I open up the upper leg, and let me move it to the side, as you can see, it contains more information in this area. It is slightly curved in this manner at the bottom of the leg, at the bottom of the upper leg, and it is curved at the top of the lower leg, so that when I rotate this like so, they can still mesh together and you wouldn't immediately realize that there is a disconnect between them. So what you intend to do here is basically, let me create an example layer over here. Okay, so this is the foot, the lower leg, and the upper leg. Let me grab a brush, okay, and let me grab a color, something like this. So the intention here is to rotate these joints from these locations. Let's say this is the center of rotation for the lower leg, and this is the center of rotation for the foot. Okay, so if you cut this layers like so, obviously they're going to be detached as soon as that rotation is managed, as soon as rotation occurs. Instead, if you cut them like this for the lower leg, okay, and let's grab another color and cut it like this for the upper leg, and let's grab even more colors and like so for the foot. Now I have room for rotation. Okay, when I rotate, it is not going to immediately detach from the rest of the limbs. That connection will not be severed. Now, that being said, this is my choice. This is by no means a necessity. If your artistic vision includes the illusion of animation, or not illusion, but the animation looking like an animation, looking not photorealistic, but made out of obviously separated pieces in a collage, you can just chop them straight off. So that is your decision. But if you're going to, if you want your character to resemble an actual human being and not made out of separate pieces of visual information, if you don't want to go in that direction, you should do something like this, okay? Save more information than necessary to accommodate for this limb movement, for this joint movement. That's the idea. Another thing I did was that if you look at the actual size of this Photoshop file, since it's made out of high resolution photographs out of an iPhone, when you look at the image size, it is like 3000 pixels by 1100 pixels, which is a lot. I don't need that amount of data. And yeah, I can go inside After Effects and scale down everything, but why bother? Because I have so many different layers, so many separate pieces. Instead of doing that, I can just as easily go in here, save as my file as a lower res version, and change the image size to 50% or 30% or whatever you feel is appropriate for your animation. And that is exactly what I did. If you look at my files, this is the original file which you're looking at it inside Photoshop right now, but I also have a lower res version, lower resolution version, exactly cut in half, and I'm going to use that version in After Effects for animation because I don't need that much resolution anyway. So let's go to After Effects now. Now in here we have already talked about the Mr. Blob sprite and in-betweening animation or using separate drawn images to show frame by frame. We've looked at it. Now let's do the rigging technique. Okay, so unfortunately I have mistakenly closed my folder, so let me open it back up. Not course files, tutorials, 2D animation, character animations, FRE low res. Okay, I'm going to put it inside characters with retaining layer sizes and editable layer sizes again. That's good. Now let's turn off the Mr. Blob sprite layers. Now FRE low res by itself as a composition is perfectly usable. Unlike the case in Mr. Blob sprites, it is not just a collection of unrelated sprite pieces or emote states or animation states floating in the middle of a file. These are just connected to each other right now or visually connected to each other. So I can pretty much do whatever animation I need to do in this composition itself. I just need more room. So let's go to the composition settings, and instead of just using the width of like 537 pixels, I'm going to use 1500 pixels, give myself some room. And in terms of animation, like 10 seconds is more than good enough. If necessary, I can drop it down to something else after my animation is complete. Okay, so this is FRE low res, hit OK. Now what I need to do here is a couple of things. I cannot or I should not start animating this straight away. I need to connect these limbs, attach these limbs to each other in a chain so that they work together. Meaning that if I move the upper leg, right, the lower leg should be attached to it and the foot should be attached to the lower leg, because in reality they are attached to these limbs, right? So I shouldn't be following my animation with moving all of the objects piece by piece. If they are in a chain, they should appear in a chain and they should be constructed in a chain. That's the idea. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, the torso will be the main object. The torso will be the main parent object. This is called a parent-child relationship. This is going to be the parent of everything. This is the main piece that is not going to be connected to something by itself, but everything will be connected to it. So let's start with the legs, for example. Legs closer to us, those are the right legs. Now we have a top piece. Oh, sorry, this is the lower leg, this is the left leg. Let's go with the right leg. So this is the right piece, top leg, okay, top of the leg, like so, and then we have the bottom of the leg, the lower leg, and then we have the foot, okay. Now I need to figure out where this rotation is going to happen from, these articulations, where the joints is going to be placed, and in order to figure that out, I need to mark them because after all, the body itself is hugely symmetrical, meaning that the left leg's articulation and the right leg's articulation will be approximately handled from the same position. So in order to avoid any type of anti-symmetries, I need to mark them. So I'm going to hit Control R to open up my rulers, and I'm going to draw a bunch of guides to where I feel like the joints should be located around. So if I go to, for example, the foot, isolate the foot, oh, there you go. The foot joint should be around here somewhere. This is where your ankle joint should be placed. Okay, let's go to the top portion. So the knee joint should be around here somewhere. I mean, I can even drag another guide to accurately place it, or I can use the same guide, just, you know, make it somewhere in the middle. It's not going to matter too much. If you want to be really pedantic about it, you can use another vertical guide for it. Doesn't matter. Okay, and I also have the hip joint as well, where the upper portion of the leg is connected to the hip, connected to the lower torso, or let's say, okay, and I need to mark it as well. Now, why is this important? This is important because, like I said, at the other end of this body, the left leg will be similarly handled from these positions as well in order to achieve symmetry. And this is what you should also be careful about when you're building this thing in Photoshop as a system. The legs should be at the same height, the arms should be at the same height, they should be correctly placed relative to each other to achieve that symmetry, obviously, right? So let's start. Now I'm going to open up torso and head, but I'm going to play around with the head later on. Let's turn on these pieces, these limbs, okay? The other thing I need to do before I can start attaching these things to each other or animating at all is that I should point out the position of rotation to each and every single one of these joints. Because as you can see, as the foot is selected, in the middle of this object, in the middle of the bounding box or the transform controls of this object is a pivot position. That is the exact center of that bounding box. Well, I need to change it. Why? Because if I want to rotate the foot, it will rotate around that pivot position. But as you can understand, this should rotate from here, from the ankle joint. So the pivot position should be repositioned towards that ankle joint, or where ankle joint should be. And in order to do that, I have to use a tool called the pan behind tool, shortcut Y. Use this and grab this pivot position and place it on the area we just marked using those guides. And we should do the same for the lower leg as well. As you can see, this is the lower leg, right? And the pivot position is obviously in the middle, but I can reposition it to where the knee joint should be. And I can do the same thing for the upper portion of the leg as well, and reposition this pivot point, not the guide, but the pivot point, to the hip joint. Okay? Now, when I rotate this, it's going to rotate from that ankle. When I rotate this, sorry, not this one, it's going to rotate from the knee, and when I rotate this, it's going to rotate from the hip. Okay? Now, the next thing to do is obviously parenting them together, and you do that with the parent and link tab over here. As you can see, each and every single one of these layers have a drop-down menu next to them, and in that list you can select any one of the other layers inside the composition. So, meaning that the foot itself will be parented to the lower leg, the right side lower leg, the leg underscore R bot, okay? And now the foot itself is a child of the lower leg. Wherever the lower leg goes, the foot comes along for the ride. So now if I rotate this, as you can see, the foot rotates with it. If I move it, and I shouldn't move it, right? I shouldn't move it, but the foot comes along with it, okay? And I'm going to do the same for the lower leg as well. It is going to be parented to the upper leg. Okay, now if I rotate the upper leg, the entire system moves together. Okay, and finally I should be parenting the upper leg to the torso. So now when I move or rotate the torso, they move together. Okay, only the torso is selected. As you can see, I'm not moving them. I'm not actually selecting them and moving them, but they are attached to that specific object, so they move together. But I can still separately, independently animate them as well. Okay, so you get the idea. And I'm going to do the same thing for literally every other limb. I can go in to these legs. Let's turn these off. Okay, the right side legs, we've done them. Now let's take care of the left side legs. So I'm going to grab the left side foot, change the position of the pivot. I'm going to grab the left side lower leg, change the position of the pivot. As you can see, I'm using the same locations in order to achieve symmetry in the animation. And I'm going to reposition the pivot point or the anchor point, that's called an anchor point in After Effects, for the upper leg on the left side as well. Okay, and similarly, I'm going to select the foot and parent it to lower leg, select the lower leg, parent it to upper leg, and select the upper leg, parent it to torso. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the right side arm. As you can see, we have a arm here. I need to figure out where the elbow joint is. This is called the elbow joint, right? And then this is the shoulder joint. I need to mark them as well. Well, we can use these guides again. So this is where the elbow joint should be approximately, and this is where the shoulder joint should be approximately. So let's grab the arm top, place its pivot position in the shoulder. Let's grab the arm bottom, place its pivot position here. Maybe it should be slightly lower than that. Okay, that's good. And as you're gonna see, we didn't separate the hand itself or the wrist joint, right? The wrist joint is not movable right now, but if your animation requires you to separate the wrist joint, separate the hand itself for extra articulation, by all means go for it. Right now I only intend to do a walk cycle in this wig, so I don't particularly need to move the wrist all that much, so I'm not going to overcomplicate things. But if you are swashbuckling and sword fighting and doing something with the wrist specifically for this character, you should separate the hand as well. Okay, so now that is complete, I'm going to grab the bottom arm, okay, reposition it like so. I'm going to select the top arm as its parent, and I'm going to go to the top part of the arm, the upper arm, and I'm going to select the torso as its parent. Okay, everything is connected to torso at the end. And then I'm going to do the same for the left side as well, and they are behind Efeoja's torso, so I cannot see them right now. Like, I can turn off everything, but I don't even need to do that, because as long as they are visible here, I don't need to see them visually in order to control their pivot position. So let's select the bottom arm, reposition its pivot, do the same for the upper arm, and then bottom arm or the lower arm, the forearm, this portion. The forearm will be connected to upper arm, this portion, right? So there you go. And this one will be connected to torso. Finally, the head. I don't need to mark the position of the neck joint because there is no symmetry here. We don't have two heads, right? You can just place it wherever you feel is appropriate. So I believe it's here around somewhere. Okay, and then I can grab the head and select torso is your parent. And with that complete, I don't need these guidelines anymore. I can just clear the guides. Now, as you can see, the system itself is working. I can move around literally every piece of Efeoja's body using this system. Okay. There you go. All right. That's how this works. So now, how are you going to animate this? Well, you need references, because if you're using a rig and if you have an intention to animate a person realistically, even if it is unrealistically, even if it is cartoony in a way, you should always work with references. Now, you can create your references yourself, and if you remember at the beginning of this course, we have given you examples from extremely famous games like Prince of Persia and Another World, and those games are from like late 1980s. This is from 1989, and Another World is from 1991. Yeah, I remember correctly. So these games are like, one of them is 35 years old, the other one is 33 years old. Very old games, almost as old as we are, but the techniques utilized here are still applicable. So if you check out Prince of Persia, Jordan Mechner, the designer of Prince of Persia, used his brother, and by using a very rudimentary, shitty birthday camera, just picked up recordings of him walking, jumping around, doing stuff that is meaningful inside the game environment, and then using those references, he paused the video in his TV monitor, and using a sketch paper, he traced over the image and used it as a frame-by-frame reference. Now, obviously, we don't need to do that. We have better technology. We can just overlay the video itself in After Effects. But the principle remains the same. You get a video of a person doing something, and then you try to match that movement with whatever rig you have in hand. That's the basic idea. And you can use this technique even when you're not using a rig. You can draw over people to do frame-by-frame animation as well, which is what Jordan Mechner and also Eric Chahi did in their games. So Eric Chahi even used references for inanimate objects, in this case a car, but he used himself for walking, for the cutscene animation, like so. Even, using the keypad, that keypad was actually recorded from his own keyboard, opening up a soda can. Every single one of these things are animated using actual video footage as references. So you can pretty much do the same. There is nothing wrong with that. And in order to do that, maybe do a quick couple of searches on YouTube for, in this case, Volt Cycle animation. So I found this. This is literally first thing that pops up when you search for Volt Cycle animation. And you can do this as well. Or, better yet, you can record yourself or have a friend record you as you're walking or doing whatever animation. Ask your friend to help you out in this case, and then import that footage inside After Effects. So what I have here among my materials is a downloaded version of this athletic male standard walk animation reference, right? And in order to download that, you can basically go to savefrom.net, and this is a YouTube downloading site. You can just throw in the link, don't worry about it. It's not going to do anything to your computer. You're going to just download an MP4 file. It doesn't have to be high resolution or anything. So I'm going to grab this, put it inside here, okay? And then put it inside here. Now, obviously, this is extremely slow motion, so we need to make sure that this is faster. So I'm going to delete this. As you can see, the frame rate is 25 frames per second, but it is slow motion. So if I play this faster, that means it's going to speed back up. So I can go in here and say interpret footage as 48 frames per second, okay, and put it in here. Now it is going to play much faster, okay, maybe even higher than that apparently. No, not delete this one, but let's interpret footage once again. like 96 frames per second. This is super fast in normal conditions, but that's normal walking, right? Maybe you can lower the speed of it, but if you're happy with the walk cycle, if this speed is good for you, now you can basically scale this up, like let's lower the opacity as well, so we can easily match it with Efauja, and let's scale it up so it approximately fits. Obviously the body proportions will be different, that's given. Not everybody's proportions are going to be the same, but it is approximately at the same location, right? So pretty much now I can use this reference to correctly place Efauja's limbs, rotate them cleanly, using this as a reference. That's the idea. And we suggest you do the same. And after that, after you have completed your walk cycle, it is going to be looping in the same manner the bouncing Mr. Blob was looping in the previous character animation tutorial. You're going to create a looping animation out of this, and then you're going to loop it over and over again and place it inside your parallax animation layers. That's it. That's how you do a character rig. Hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.